Hello and welcome. Why is the involvement in Afghanistan such a difficult situation for Western powers to resolve? And has the approach to the corruption, chaos and violence been handled wrongly? More than 8 years after the US military forced the Taliban from power, its fighters have regrouped and are attacking both civilian and military targets. Bitter tribal divisions and rampant corruption are also pushing that country dangerously close to the edge. The International Security Assistance Force, or ISAF, with personnel from more than 40 countries, has been struggling to keep the peace. Afghanistan also produces 90% of the world's opium, and most of the profits from that drug trade is believed to financially support Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Many nations are now openly skeptical about Afghanistan's future, and both the US and Canada will begin to withdraw their combat troops from 2011. Most of the blame for the chaos has been directed at President Hamid Karzai's government, which critics call indecisive and corrupt. Well, today we ask, how critical is Afghanistan's stability for the rest of the world, and what needs to be done to bolster its political and security institutions? We'll take your questions and comments through SMS and email. I'm joined now by the former Afghan foreign minister and presidential candidate, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah. He pulled out of a presidential runoff against the incumbent, Hamid Karzai, in 2009, saying he feared widespread fraud. Dr. Abdullah has also accused the Afghan leadership of, quote, losing a sense of direction, unquote. Dr. Abdullah, good to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you.
Let me start off by asking you, what has brought Afghanistan to its knees to such a degree? Why do things seem to be getting so bad, consistently bad, and especially for the people of the country?
We missed some great opportunities in the past few years. If you recall, the first few years, the people were much more hopeful. Security was good. We had just started to build a government and institutions, and then we had first round elections. And then gradually things started deteriorating in terms of issues of governance, corruption, the political situation became chaotic, and the security started deteriorating. There are a few reasons for that before getting to the present situation. There was a national consensus within the country behind the process. That was broken. In the region, unfortunately, President Musharraf played a double game by harboring Taliban and helping them. And internationally, there was the issue of Iraq, which deviated attention. Combination of the national, regional, and international factors, I think, has led to today's situation.
Well, so did those missed opportunities effectively leave Afghanistan as a failing state? Is that the condition it's in now?
I wouldn't say that it's a failing state, but if we leave it as it is, and if it is not seen by the Afghan side, I mean the Afghan government mainly, which is in the lead there, and by the international community with the sense of urgency that is required, then we might head that way.
What has changed in the year since those in the year that's passed since those elections, which everyone had such great hopes for?
Do you mean the recent elections or earlier ones?
From 1 year ago, when basically everyone had great hopes the country could move forward. What visible changes have there been in that time?
Visible changes in positive direction, which the people could say that these are the positive changes, have not happened in the past 1 year or in the past 2 to 3 years. There was elections, it was marked by fraud. In today's situation, 10 members of the cabinet are still undecided 6 months past the inauguration of Mr. Karzai, and the decisions of the parliament have been ignored, the constitution have been ignored, and many things which has led to today's situation.
Were the people of Afghanistan let down by Western powers because they didn't put their foot down much more seriously when it came to monitoring the election and commenting on the results?
I should say that the expectations of the people were much higher than what the international community delivered. Nevertheless, the international community put resources and efforts, but at the same time, the expectations of our people were much higher.
And there are those who believe that you pulled out of that the planned runoff with Hamid Karzai at the end of last year in order to sabotage his credibility, that by pulling out basically he takes presidency by default and his credibility is lost. Wasn't your strategy?
Absolutely not. I think the credibility of a government depends on its actions, on its policies, on the will of the people, and the support from the people. That was already not there, so I didn't need an extra effort. And second to that, mine is not personal against a person, but it is for the opportunity that is left. And if we didn't seize it, then it would have slipped off our hands. That was behind me becoming a candidate, behind that decision. But at the same time, the reason for not to participate, it was basically based on the fact that I knew for sure, for fact, that the elections, second round, would have been even more fraudulent than the first one. That could have led to a crisis in the country beyond control for anybody. So I didn't want to be part of that.
I'm going to give you an email, if I may, here, so that came in from a viewer in Sierra Leone. Amadou Justus Ba in Sierra Leone wrote in saying, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah has to be an effective oppositional leader. This is the only chance to bring real democracy to Afghanistan and to shed light on the weaknesses and inefficiencies of the present government. I mean, pulling out the way you did it cost you the support of some of the people, maybe even the Americans, because you actually didn't stand up as a visible opposition leader against Hamid Karzai?
As far as what happened after the elections, I've already laid the foundation for the democratic opposition, a movement, an alliance called National Alliance for Change and Hope. That's the foundation for a democratic opposition, which will be there in the politics of Afghanistan as long as it takes. It's not aimed at just the upcoming parliamentary elections or next round presidential elections. So that's what I'll be doing, and we will build up pressure to the extent possible in order to make the government accountable. In the fact that you see in the parliament of Afghanistan that now the parliament is more re-energized. It's not just because of the solid block of opposition, which is a minority in the parliament, are supporters. It's because of the overall decision by the parliament, but nevertheless that is an important factor. So that will be there. At the same time, the international community is standing by the process and helping, for example, the transparency of the elections in the upcoming parliamentary one is crucial.
Okay. Now, prior to your arrival here in Washington, D.C., President Hamid Karzai was here, and during that time he talked about a number of things. This is what he had to say about the Taliban during that visit.
Now, there are thousands of the Taliban who are not ideologically oriented, who are not part of Al-Qaeda or other terrorist networks, or controlled from outside in any manner troublesome to us. It is this group of the Taliban that we are addressing in the peace jirga. It is this group that is our intention.
So he's talking about engaging with the Taliban. He's saying there are so many that are not ideologically connected to Al-Qaeda, and these are the people to engage with. So how is the Taliban going to trust a government that basically partnered up with a foreign power that made it a stated mission to come in and wipe them out? I mean, what chance does he have of engaging with the Taliban?
Not only that, why is it those who are not ideologically linked with Al-Qaeda lined up with the Taliban or with the Taliban movement, the core movement? Why is it that this is happening, if that's right? If there is any truth in it, that might be because of ineffectiveness of the government, because of the corruption in those areas, that the Taliban are able to take recruits from among the people. The way ahead in regards to the national reconciliation is to deal with this issue of national reconciliation in much broader context than just focused on one group, which is the Taliban. I mean, creating a system, establishing a system, in providing a system for the people, that it works for the people and for the interest of the people, so we can isolate the Taliban, and then they are not able to take recruits from among the people, and also studying Taliban as they are, rather than thinking that that they might join the peace process, because from their perspective, participation in the democratic system is not part of their agenda. It has never been. Weaker Taliban, stronger Taliban, or as they are, this is not part of their agenda.
So it's a case of understanding their agenda, basically, is it?
It's understanding their agenda, their nature in dealing with it, and understanding also the fact that what are the domestic factors which has helped Taliban to spread their influence. Apart from the military security side of it, it's mainly losing the people which are like-minded, the people which are not for the return of the Taliban. Their call is not for that, but we are not giving them better chances.
Now, one thing you can't escape is, of course, America's involvement fairly extensively for the last 8 years. Does it concern you that America can seem such a fickle partner? One minute they love President Hamid Karzai, next minute he's corrupt and inefficient and they're strongly backing you, next minute they love him again, and suddenly you can't get meetings in Washington and everyone's ignoring you. How do you cope with that?
No, when you are talking about Americans, we should say that they have been generous in their support. They have been standing by the people of Afghanistan, and in terms of coming to Washington, I had got in every meeting that I had planned my trip based upon in the Senate, in the Congress, and 10 speaking engagements directly communicating my message to the people. But in terms of consistency in the American policy towards Afghanistan, I should say that it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, there was a strong feeling you were snubbed in DC, that you'd been so much in favor, and then this trip wasn't really one that you could.
No, I don't think that I was a pick in terms of candidates for the Americans. I was a pick by our own people, and I was a candidate of the people. In last year around this time, based on the demand of our people, I decided to be a candidate, and my campaign was such that nobody could ignore it. It was the only campaign in the country with such a vigor, energy, and prospect. And then, of course, the reaction towards that campaign couldn't be but what it was. So what I depended upon was the support from the people. In terms of being in Washington, I got every meeting which I had asked for in the Senate, in the Congress, and also the speaking engagements. At the same time, I let the administration know that I'm here. They know that I am here.
You don't think they're scared of upsetting President Karzai because you're such a vocal critic of him?
I will remain vocal critic, and that's I'm much more critical when I'm back home than I'm here. So here my aim was to get the message across to the American people.
Do you really need America? I mean, can anything effectively happen in Afghanistan without America's help right now?
At the moment, the American help and support is crucial and critical, and it has the lead in helping Afghanistan security, governance, developmental process, reconstruction, military support, institutional capacity building, and so on and so forth. So there is no substitute for it today. But my point is that if you have an effective partner, or if you can engage your partner in a way that it can help the common purpose.
Partner or occupier? it's a difference.
Occupier, I wouldn't call it, because I have lived under occupation during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, and absolute majority of the people consider that one as an occupation. Today, the people of Afghanistan 8 years ago, 9 years ago, welcomed the presence of the international forces, and that was the main reason that today we have achieved things which have been achieved so far. But if the presence there continues without further improvement in the lives of the people, or without enabling Afghanistan to stand on its own feet whilst the forces are leaving, then of course part of the blame will come on the international forces.
Dr. Abdullah, more questions for you. We're going to take a short break here. We're back with more of our discussion. We'll hear from Dr. Abdullah about his plans to tackle some of Afghanistan's most pressing problems. Don't go away. Welcome back. More than 8 years after the US promised a new beginning in Afghanistan, it remains mired in religious extremism, violence, and a flourishing drug trade. Is Afghanistan close to being a failed state, and how can it be saved? My guest is the former Afghan foreign minister who ran as presidential candidate, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah. He remains an outspoken critic of President Hamid Karzai. Now, on that issue of managing the country and President Karzai's role, in what way do you think he has really failed his people? I mean, in what has he done primarily wrong, and what real control do you think he has over the country, apart from that sort of bubble of Kabul, basically?
If you take the process from the beginning of it, he had the absolute support from the majority of the population in the process act, and there was a consensus behind the process, and that was built without him making much efforts around him and for him. He should have seized that opportunity and maintained the unity of the people, and then he should have known that the foreign troops will not be there forever and should not be there forever. And at a time that the focus and attention is in Afghanistan, built institutions and a system which works for the people as a whole. I don't think that he realized it right from the beginning, and his focus was mainly to stay in power. And then, in order to stay in power, his mentality is a mentality of control, controlling the situation through your own cronies. And corrupt officials are being placed in different provinces, and that has been the cause of the resentment for the people. What happened in the elections also created a lot of resentment and disenfranchisement. Many things that happened in between has led to today's situation.
It is a tough place, though, isn't it, Afghanistan, when alliances can change so quickly. There are so many factors to consider. The corruption seems to be so ingrained over these years now of strife, seems to be so ingrained in the culture of Afghanistan. Can that, for example, ever be wiped out completely?
Before getting to your point, it is a tough place. But the golden opportunity which was provided for Mr. Karzai after the fall of the Taliban was never provided for any leader in our country in the history of Afghanistan. International support, full-fledged, and domestic support. So that was the time to get it right. And corruption, if you say that it is ingrained there, it started quite well. But then things started deteriorating. The thing is not that a leadership in the country or a government is expected to tackle the issues overnight, but he should be given the people the signs of change. When that is not seen, then the people are disappointed. Or if things go from bad to worse, then the people will be disappointed.
Sir, another email question to you, if I may, from Musa Imam, who wrote in saying, what does Dr. Abdullah Abdullah think he would have done differently had he fought and won the runoff election against Hamid Karzai? How would you have done it differently?
Absolutely. Being honest to the people about the challenges and about the opportunities, and returning the power to the people, and empowering the people, and making the people as true participants in the process, whether it is governance, whether it is issues of developmental process or security or otherwise. That's, I think, in also, once you make a promise for the people, deliver. You make sure that you can deliver and then announce it to the people. Today, the main issue is the lack of trust between the people in the government.
And for that reason, and because of the issues we've been discussing, do you feel you could have effectively reconciled all those tribal factions, brought all those differences together?
Absolutely. I think if you're talking about different tribes in the country, I don't think that there is a conflict between different tribes in Afghanistan today. And elite are divided for obvious reasons, but if you listen to the people will go for the common interest, for the common good. And investing on the people is the way forward, because the main problem today is the growing gap between the people and the government, and that's because of the, as I told you earlier, because of bad governors being appointed and bad decisions being made. It's not just appointments.
Let me get another email question to you, sir. Ozair Basit Safi in Afghanistan wrote in, nationalism has destroyed Afghanistan. The country needs a federal system where each and every province has its own autonomous government. How important is it to devolve local power in your country, to make it local and to give local authorities much more of a control in what's said?
The decentralization or devolving the power and giving the provinces more authority is part of our platform, political platform. And the elected governors, elected mayors, and then certain other things, including changing the system from a highly centralized presidential system into a parliamentary system. These are all part of our platform. And that will require constitutional amendment, and that might take time. Meanwhile, we can do things under current circumstances, like giving the provincial council institution more power, or in a say in the affairs of the country, or local shuras, so that people are part of the process. So a lot can be done at this stage to empower the people in local in localities.
Now we have another email question that came in from Canada, from Rashid Chowdhury, who says, when will Afghanistan be ready to take charge of its own security? Now that Dr. Abdullah Abdullah is in the opposition, how does he have a different view on how the war should be conducted? And also, what happens when most of the Western troops leave? What's going to happen?
If they leave tomorrow, if they leave
on schedule, yeah, on schedule. But
if we build institutions and a system which work for the country in response to the needs of the people of the country, then I think Afghanistan can sustain itself. And that's the core of my opposition to the current system, which is not functioning in the interest of the country, is that one. That if we don't create a system and deliver to the people, if the Afghan side is not able to deliver to the people, we will be dependent on foreign forces forever. This is not something that the people of Afghanistan would want. That period could be shortened as we move towards the civilian, political, and developmental aspects of the situation.
Can the country become self-sufficient, considering it's been so ravaged? Can you, for example, with the drug situation, give the drug producers an alternative? Can you give something to the people that allows them to move on from a very, very flourishing drug trade?
If you consider like 24 provinces of the country which are drug-free, so if people in 24 provinces can live without drugs, why should we think that another 8 provinces couldn't follow the same path? So there are some successful experiences in that regard. That's as far as the drugs are concerned. Sustaining itself economically, it will take time, but Afghanistan is rich as far as the natural resources are concerned. The cost of security in Afghanistan, that one, once foreign troops leave, will still for quite some time Afghanistan will be dependent on foreign support. Otherwise, there are ways to reach self-sufficiency.
Well, Dr. Abdullah, I have so many questions for you, but we're out of time. I thank you very much for taking part in this discussion.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us too. Of course, you can follow the show on Facebook and see what we're up to there. You can give us feedback on topics and post your questions and comments. But for now, that's it from me and the team. We'll see you next time.